Welcome to video 1. This is a video where we're going to go through some of the basic Excel commands you need for this course. Some of you, no doubt, especially those of you in the College of Business, will know Excel quite well, and you have no need really to go through this video whatsoever. This is an optional video. However, if you're not familiar with Excel, if you're totally new to Excel, which is fine, there's no prerequisite in this course as far as, computational knowledge, then you will want to watch this video. And you can stop and pause it at various points just to make sure that you're following along and doing things correctly. Also, if you missed my most excellent lecture on Tuesday, and it was a spectacular lecture, I have to tell you, you can watch this video, try to catch up and recapture some of the magic. Okay, so first thing about activity 1, remember you only want to turn in the last page of this document, not the whole thing. And the first thing we're going to learn is how to open up data sets. And so I'm going to scroll down here to entering and storing data in Excel. Now, all of the data sets that we use in this class are going to be stored as Google Sheet documents. And Google Sheets is a repository for data sets on Google that stores data in an Excel-like format. So you can see here that there'll always be hyperlinks. There's a hyperlink there. If you hover over it, you can see the link. All you have to do to open the file is put your mouse on the hyperlink, hit Control, and hit Enter. And that opens it up automatically. And there we go. This is a data set that I created, I believe, 2 summers ago. And basically, I was recording information about apartments in Daytona Beach for rent that were on Craigslist. And so you can see there's the price, the rent of each place, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, the size in square feet, and so on. And you can see that this Google Sheet document looks very much like an Excel document. Now, one thing, I will tell you is that I believe you need a Google account to open that link and be able to access a data set. So if you don't already have one, you want to create one, it's quite easy. You can just create a Gmail account. It only takes a few minutes. If you run into problems, please see me. Now, we actually can do a lot with this data set in Google Sheets, but it turns out that Google Sheets does not have all the functionalities that Excel has. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to download this as an Excel file. So I'm going to click on the File tab, go down to Download, and choose Excel. And here it's downloaded it here at the bottom. You may have to search your download folder to find yours. Every computer, it saves at different places, okay? I'm going to go ahead and hit it enable. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do, the first thing we want to do is we want to add something called an analysis tool pack. And it turns out that while Excel can do a lot of things, there are some computations that are too complicated to have as a formula. So they're kind of packaged together as a tool pack. In order to download the tool pack, you click on the File in the top menu there. And you'll scroll down to where Options are. So Options will be in different places for different people. And choose that. A window will pop up. And you're going to want to go down on the left-hand menu and click Add-ins. Usually it's at the bottom. So I'm going to click Add-ins. I'm going to go to the middle menu here and click Analysis Tool Pack. And then I'm going to click Go. Not OK, Go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the first item, which will be the Analysis Tool Pack. Click OK. And it will automatically install. Now, how do you know that you've done it correctly? Okay. Well, if you go to the top menu here, the main menu, and you click on Data, and you go to the right side of the menu, you should see something called Data Analysis. And that's the tool pack right there. So you've installed it. Now, one word of caution, which is that Excel has only recently been incorporated into Macs. And the commands for Macs and PCs in Excel are not exactly the same. And so downloading the tool pack might be a little different in Macs. One of the really nice things about Excel, and the reason why I like using it in this class, is it happens to be incredibly well documented. So suppose you want to see how to install the tool pack in a Mac. All you have to do is just Google Add Analysis Tool Pack, Excel, Mac, and a gazillion videos will pop up. Excel is probably the most widely documented program there is in the web. And there are so many videos you can watch and learn things. And I do this myself. I don't use Excel a great deal. In my work, I use a more specialized statistical program. So I forget how to do things in Excel all the time. When I forget, I go to YouTube, type in whatever I want to do, and I watch the video. Very nice. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to talk about how to do a little bit of formatting here. Now, one thing I will mention that's important, with your data files, you always want to store them. I mean, technically they're in downloads, but you want to have a dedicated folder. So I would store this, create a folder. I already happen to create one, but I'll create it again. Let's see, we'll call it MA222 data sets. And there we go. Whenever you store data files, you always want to store them as an Excel workbook. Even though it won't be an issue in our class later on, you'll find that a lot of the data sets that you'll encounter will be CSV, and CSVs are not as nice to work with for a number of reasons. For one thing, they won't save formatting changes that you've made. So always save it as an XLSX or AKA Excel workbook. Okay, we're ready to save that. And now I don't have to worry. I know that if I want to find this data set again, and you are going to want to find data sets, you're going to want to come back and work with them in the future in this class. You don't have to go through all this rigmarole all over again. Hold on. There we go. Oh, I've already saved it. Hold on. Okay, you won't have this problem. I've already saved that data set before when I was doing work with it. Okay, you won't have that problem. All right, a few types of formatting things we want to do. We might want to add a column. So suppose I want a new column in B. I'm going to click on column B. I'm going to type insert, and a new column appears. Okay. If I wanted to insert a row, it's the same thing. If I want to insert a new row at 2, I would go ahead, click on 2, highlight the whole row, and then hit insert. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay. So let's go ahead and do some computations in Excel. Let's compute the price per square foot. Now, whenever we want Excel to return a value, we always have to start with an equal sign. One of the things that you really want to get into the habit of doing is using what I call cell operations. So for example, notice I could compute the price per square foot. I type 1120 and 1050. Oh, what happened? Remember what I said, whenever you want Excel to return a value, you have to hit an equal sign. Okay, now I'll get a number. But that's not the smart way of doing that. The reason why is if I want to do that for every single apartment, and it turns out there's 121 in this case, I have to manually enter this command for each of those rows. So here's the smart way of doing it. It's to use the fact that Excel does computations with cell contents. So in other words, if I click on this cell and I click on this cell, this is now a formula. It tells Excel, take whatever numbers is in A2 and divide it by whatever number's in E2. I get the same result, and you might say, big deal. Well, here's the big deal. Now I'm going to use a very nice property of Excel called the pull down command. So if I want to do the same thing for the second row, when I pull this down, the way I do this is I'm going to hover my mouse over the lower right corner. I'm going to click enter. I'm going to hold that down and drag. And what Excel is going to do, just like here, it recognized take whatever's in A2 and divide it by E2. When I drag this command down, it's going to do the same commands for the quantities in the third row. So notice when I dragged it down, it's just dragged the cells down. Now it's taking whatever's in A3 and dividing it by whatever's in E3. And so I can just drag this down and do this for the whole data set. Okay? Now, notice that there's a few division by zeros because some of the prices I didn't know the size of the apartments, okay? And so that kind of motivates why we might want to sort data values. So let's go ahead and sort data values. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to sort apartment size. In other words, I want to sort the values in this row from smallest to largest. So the way I sort values in a column is I click on the letter of that column. That selects everything in that column. I go to data. I click on sort. And I always want to make sure that expand the selection is selected. And the reason why is because when I sort the values in that column, I want all of the values in those corresponding rows to move with it. In other words, if you look at the first apartment, it has a size of 1,050 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Well, I want all of that information in that row to move together, right? And so when you pick expand selection, it knows to do that. A new menu will pop up. Notice that I have headers. So I want to make sure, in other words, I have labels on each column. Those are called headers. I want to make sure that's clicked, that's selected. And now I'm going to do apartment size. And it's doing it from smallest to largest. You can do it smallest to largest, largest to smallest. You can actually define your own way that you want to sort it. We're never going to do that. And there we go. So you can see the smallest apartment was 400 square feet and so on. Now, if I scroll to the bottom, I'm going to find out that the missing values appear at the bottom. Missing values always are at the end. Okay. Let's see. I might want to number these apartments. So let's go ahead and add another column. So I might want to label these. I might want to number these 1 through whatever, however many I have. And again, Excel has a really nice option, which is it can autofill a sequence of regularly spaced numbers. So if I start a sequence of numbers that are evenly spaced, so 1, 2, 3, right? It's a sequence, they're spaced by 1. I can go ahead, I can start the sequence. I can click and hold down the first cell, drag it down there. Okay. Now move my mouse over here and select it and just drag down to the bottom. And it will automatically complete the sequence. And my computer's a little slow. It's kind of sticking here. There we go. Okay. And just drag this down. I believe there's 121 apartments in this data set. And there we are. Okay. Now it's always nice to format data. Formatted data is just so much easier to read. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the values in this column. I'm not going to select the whole column. And there's also a really nice trick for doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to click on the first cell of the values that I want to format. And what I'm going to do, what formatting am I going to do? Well, I'm going to center the values so they look nice like this. And then I'm going to put a border so it's kind of easy to read, okay? Those are the two things I'm going to do with all the values in column A. So I'm going to click again on the first cell. I'm going to hold down the Control Shift at the same time. Hold down the Control and the Shift keys. And then I'm going to hit the down arrow. and you can see what happens. Excel goes to the last cell before there's an empty space. And now I can format this. I can write, oops, let me do that again. Click, Control Shift down, and I can do this a number of ways. I can go to Home, I can center the data values, notice they're nice and centered, and I can put a border around them, and there we are. It's nice. It's kind of nice to be able to do that. The last thing I want to show you is how to cut and paste data values in Excel. And this is a little tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a column where D is. So I'm going to click on column D, select all the values in that column, click Insert. And I'm going to call this price per square foot, just like I did in the previous column. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the values from column C into column D. And I want to show you how to use different types of paste commands, okay? So I'm going to click on this first one, Control Shift down. And I can copy this by using the right click and say copy. Now I'm going to come up here. And notice if I say paste, watch what happens. If I paste, things get screwed up. Why did that happen? Well, let's look at what's going on in this cell. Notice in this cell, it took what was in B2 and divided it by what was in G2. Okay. Now, when I pasted them, the formula moved over also. If I click here, it tries to take what's in C2 and divide it by what's in H2, which is not a number. So what I want to do is sometimes I want to paste without the formula being there. Notice that this is not a number. What's in D2, this is a formula. And the way we do this is we paste values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replay this. I'm going to go ahead, select this again, copy it again. Now when I go back to paste, I'm going to right click and I'm going to notice there are a lot of different options. There's pasting with formulas, but I can also paste as values. And notice what's happening in column D. Bad, good. And I want to show you the difference between these two. Notice that when I click on this, it's using a formula. When I click on this, it's just a value. And so we're going to talk about pasting with values, and that's a very useful thing to be able to do. Last thing I want to do is talk about how to compute square roots, and then we're finished. So I'm going to go ahead and so let's suppose we want the square root of 9. So when we start Excel, remember, we always want to start with an equal sign, right? We want Excel to return a number to us. And whenever you start to type in a command in Excel, Excel has this really cool feature that there's an autofill menu that appears. So Excel is saying, okay, here's all the commands I have that start with SQ. And we want SQRT for square root. I could type in 9, but I'm going to just click in the cell. I'm going to take the square root of whatever's in cell Q4. Now, I can hit enter and it'll auto-complete the parentheses, but I'm going to be a good boy and do like that, and I get 3. Now notice that if I change this from 9, and by the way, you don't have to work inside the cell. When you click on a cell, the contents of that cell appear in this formula bar right here, which is really nice. Notice if I change that to 16, watch what happens for the cell underneath the square root of n. It's going to change. And that's why we say that Excel does not do computations with numbers. It does computations with cell contents. That's when your Excel is most useful. Because if I change one value, every formula that references that cell will automatically change, which is a really nice feature. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this, and you can really appreciate how powerful and useful Excel is. If you have any other questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help. The SI, Greg, for this class is just an exceptional person. He's been the SI for several semesters, was the best student I ever had in this class, quite frankly, and he's just really an exceptional resource. So make sure you go to the SI sessions also if you feel like you need it. And you should be ready to do activity 1.